3 years ago, a school teacher visiting the National Museum of Australia stood transfixed in front of a giant canvas covered in ochre spirals and haunting faces. Staring back from the rock panel were beings unlike any humans she had ever seen. Enormous black eyes covering most of their faces, skin as pale as chalk, and one striking absence. None of them had mouths. The guide whispered that these figures, known as the Wandjina, were painted by Aboriginal artists in the Kimberley region of Western Australia, a remote landscape covering more than 400,000 square kilometres and home to an estimated 100,000 rock art images. As she later learned, only 3 Indigenous groups, the Ngurinyan, Warora and Wunambal, are guardians of this tradition. For weeks afterwards, that teacher couldn't shake the feeling that she had glimpsed a secret meant to be hidden in plain sight. Why would artists who meticulously recorded plants, animals and everyday life leave out such a fundamental feature? Why would a culture that has survived on the Australian continent for at least 65,000 years represent their revered ancestors without mouths? By the end of this video, you'll understand how this omission may hold clues, not just to ancient art, but to humanity's own origins. And you'll see how patterns that span continents, timelines and technologies converge on this enigma. Stay with us. This is a mystery archaeologists rarely discuss in public. Before we start peeling away the layers of symbolism and science, it's important to pay respect to the custodians of this knowledge. The stories and images of the Wandjina belong to the Ngurinyan, Warora and Wunambal peoples of the Kimberley. In their tradition, the Wandjina are rain and cloud spirits. They shaped the landscape, created living beings and continue to influence the weather. Elders from the Wandjina community still repaint these images every decade to maintain their presence and ensure the arrival of the monsoon rains. Our aim isn't to appropriate or romanticize these beliefs, but to explore how their art speaks across cultures and time. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll unravel 3 interconnected mysteries: the seemingly impossible anatomy of the Wandjina, the lost technology or symbolism hinted by their missing mouths, and the uncanny global patterns that link Australia to Africa, Europe, and the Americas. Along the way, you'll hear parallels from science, tales of megafauna, archaeology, navigation, and oral history that show why ancient stories often contain kernels of truth. Let's begin with the image that first left that museum visitor in awe. Imagine you discover an old family album. Most photographs show familiar faces, noses, mouths, hair and smiles that reflect generations of ordinary people. Nestled between these portraits, you find a series of paintings of family elders that look nothing like anyone in your lineage. Their heads are huge, their eyes occupy more than half their faces, and they have no mouths. That jarring contrast is what researchers feel when they compare Wandjina imagery with other Aboriginal rock art. Whereas neighbouring Nguyen figures depict slim, elegant human forms in fine detail, the Wandjina are rendered with broad strokes and simplified yet striking features. Their eyes dominate. Some paintings show pupils and eyelashes, others depict black or empty sockets. The absence of a mouth is universal. One explanation offered by elders is that the Wandjina are so powerful they communicate without speech. If they had mouths, the rains would never stop. Another interpretation is that painting a mouth would give the spirit too much power. When lines radiate from the heads of the figures, they are said to represent lightning or the halos of storm clouds. Even the skin color stands out. Many Wandjina figures are painted white, an unusual choice in a culture where everyday representations feature dark ochre tones. The Manjal or Namarali, one of the Wandjina ancestors, is described in stories as so bright that his skin glows like chalk. With eyes occupying up to 60% of the face, a head disproportionately large for any human skull, and the consistent omission of mouths across thousands of paintings, It's as if the artists were deliberately drawing attention to specific traits. But why? Think back to the album analogy. If different artists contributed to the same family album, the discrepancies would suggest a purposeful message rather than incompetence. That same sense of deliberate design permeates the Wandjina. Keep in mind this puzzle as we move to how these figures may have communicated without mouths. Not long ago, a 4-year-old boy tried to swipe a finger across his family's television, expecting it to behave like a tablet. In his mind, every screen should respond to touch. It's the only technology he's known. This innocent gesture raises an intriguing question. When we look at ancient art, are we misinterpreting sophisticated technology through our own limited lens? The missing mouths on the Wandjina invite several theories. One is that the beings communicated telepathically. They didn't need vocal cords, so the artists depicted them without mouths. Another suggests the Wandjina wore helmets or breathing apparatuses that covered their mouths. Those halo-like lines and headdresses around their heads could be stylized representations of gear. A more grounded explanation is symbolic. By leaving the mouth blank, artists signified silence and sacred power. There is cultural evidence that lends weight to these ideas. In Dreamtime stories, the Wandjina regulate the seasons and punish lawbreakers with floods, lightning and cyclones. According to some accounts collected in children's encyclopedias, the Wandjina created the land and all living things, painted their images on cave walls before retreating into waterholes, and can bring strong weather if people do not follow the laws. Elders repaint these images not as decoration, but to wake up the spirits and renew their life force. The ritual itself hints at a technology of communication between human and spirit that bypasses spoken language. Western researchers who first documented the Kimberley art in the 19th century remarked on how different the Wandjina looked from other figures. Some speculated they represented foreigners or even visitors from the stars. Whatever their origin, the fact that the paintings are refreshed every decade shows that the story remains alive. We must be careful not to project our science fiction onto indigenous art. Yet the possibility that these ancestors communicated without speech invites us to broaden our definition of technology. Keep that thought as we look beyond Australia to see if similar motifs appear elsewhere. Imagine driving through a foreign country without knowing the language, but still understanding road signs. A red octagon means stop whether you're in London or Lagos. Some symbols transcend culture because they communicate universal truths. When the museum teacher began comparing Wandjina imagery with rock art from other regions, she noticed uncanny resemblances. In the Sahara Desert of Algeria lies a World Heritage Site called Tassili Najer, where more than 15,000 drawings and engravings record climate changes, animal migrations, and human life from around 6000 BC. Among its figures are round-headed beings with large eyes and no discernible mouths. In the American Southwest, Barrier Canyon-style pictographs show ghostly anthropomorphic figures with big eyes and tapered bodies painted high on canyon walls. On the European continent, cave paintings from Neolithic France and Spain depict strange masked beings surrounded by radiating lines. These similarities may be coincidental, but they raise an eyebrow. Why do cultures separated by oceans and millennia choose to portray powerful beings with large heads, big eyes, and blank faces? Anthropologists argue that humans across environments conceive of spirit beings in comparable ways. The big eyes could symbolize all-seeing wisdom, while the absence of a mouth could signify omniscience or silence. It's like different witnesses describing the same event from their unique perspectives. Each culture filters an extraordinary encounter through its own worldview. The globally repeated motifs suggest a shared human experience. Perhaps a memory of ancestors, natural phenomena, or altered states encoded in art. As we consider these connections, the chronology of human history comes into question. Did ideas about these beings spread with migrating peoples? Or did separate cultures independently arrive at similar representations? To answer that, we must examine the timeline of human migration and the dating of the art itself. Think of drawing a family tree and suddenly discovering that your great-great-grandmother immigrated 20 years earlier than everyone thought. That single change would force you to rethink relationships and historical context. Our understanding of early human migration is undergoing a similar revision. For decades, archaeologists believed that modern humans left Africa around 60,000 years ago. Yet evidence from Australia challenges that timeline. Excavations at sites like Majabebe in the Northern Territory have yielded ochre fragments and stone tools that push Aboriginal occupation back at least 65,000 years, with some researchers arguing for even earlier dates. In the Kimberley, many rock art panels remain undated, but improved radiocarbon and optically stimulated luminescence techniques suggest some paintings could exceed 40,000 years. The broad-stroke Wandjina style itself is estimated at around 3,800 to 4,000 years old. Oral histories from the Wandjina community, however, speak of ancestors painting these figures in the Dreamtime, long before any other art form. Even if we take the more conservative scientific dates, the Wandjina tradition predates much of recorded history. This discrepancy mirrors other moments when old stories forced scientists to adjust timelines. Indigenous Australian stories describe sea levels rising and drowning coastal plains more than 7,000 years ago. And researchers have shown that such oral traditions preserved information about real post-Ice Age flooding events across 300 generations. Myth can be surprisingly accurate. As we re-evaluate the chronology of human arrival in Australia, the presence of complex, symbolic art, like the Wandjina, hints at a sophisticated culture already thriving long before the pyramids were built. Remember our genealogical tree. When dates shift, the narrative must shift too. Yet the most fascinating piece of this puzzle isn't stuck in the past. It's unfolding in the present. A few years ago, social media lit up with reports of strange lights in the night sky. Many dismissed them as drones or satellites, while others wondered if something inexplicable was happening. Now imagine the same phenomenon reported not through TikTok, but through generations of storytelling. Custodians of Wandjina sites in the Kimberley occasionally speak of lights hovering over waterholes or of mysterious presences felt near sacred caves. While outsiders might scoff, history cautions us not to dismiss such accounts. Consider the city of Troy. Once thought to be a mere legend from Homer's Iliad, it remained hidden until Heinrich Schliemann's 1870 excavations revealed a real multi-layered city. Viking sagas told of sunstones that allowed navigation on cloudy days. Centuries later, scientists discovered calcite crystals that can detect the polarization of light and help determine the sun's position even when it is obscured. Archaeologist Thorkild Ramsco proposed this idea in 1967, and a calcite crystal found in a 16th century shipwreck suggests such stones were used long after the Viking Age. Another example comes from megafauna. Aboriginal stories of giant kangaroos and marsupial lions were once dismissed until fossil evidence showed that such creatures roamed Australia in the Pleistocene. When multiple independent sources describe the same extraordinary phenomenon, scientists take notice. In the case of the Wandjina, the ongoing practice of repainting, the accounts of lights and the connection to weather patterns invite investigation rather than ridicule. Could there be natural phenomena, like bioluminescent algae or electrical discharges, that gave rise to these stories? Or are we glimpsing a cultural memory of encounters beyond our current understanding? Whether the answer is mundane or marvelous, the fact that the mystery endures keeps the tradition alive. We've traveled from a museum corridor to remote Kimberley caves, across deserts and oceans, and through the corridors of time. Three threads weave this tapestry. First, the Wandjina's impossible anatomy, their huge eyes, white faces and missing mouths, preserved in thousands of paintings over thousands of years. Second, the global pattern of similarly proportioned beings found in Africa, the Americas and Europe, hinting at a shared human archetype. Third, the chronological paradox posed by evidence of early human presence in Australia and oral traditions that predate our scientific timeline. These mysteries don't prove extraterrestrial visitors, but they do reveal how little we know about our ancestors' worldview. Perhaps the more important question isn't whether the Wandjina were aliens, but why so many people feel threatened by the idea that ancient peoples possess knowledge we can't easily explain. Curiosity has driven every scientific advance. It has also fueled myth and art. By listening respectfully to Indigenous voices and comparing stories across cultures, we open ourselves to discoveries that may reshape our understanding of history. The next time you see a painting of a mouthless figure, consider that silence may carry more power than speech. If this journey has sparked questions and challenged assumptions you once held, you're not alone. Join a growing community of independent thinkers who explore history with both wonder and respect. Give this video a like if you believe our past is richer and more complex than textbooks suggest. Share it with friends who love a good mystery, and leave a comment with your own thoughts or stories. Have you visited Kimberley Rock Art or heard similar legends elsewhere? Most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss an exploration like this. Your curiosity helps keep these stories alive. And remember, sometimes all it takes to turn a mystery into a discovery is the courage to ask the right question.